Good morning, all. We're just wait until just after the hour, so probably about 2 minutes past, and we'll get cracking. Okay, we'll just give it another minute for this highly anticipated conversation between me and Max. Okay, right. I say we get cracking. Good morning, all, and welcome. So this webinar on unlocking success with M365 Copilot, the buzzword that it is now, and strategies for effective adoption. So my name's Chris Freeman, and I'm a modern workspace pre-sales consultant here at Ultima. And basically, all of my time very recently, or specifically since November, has been pretty much all around Copilot for M365, and all of the other Copilots that are out there, but the big one being Copilot for M365. And basically, it's how it's revolutionizing the way that we are working in our business workflows. So note that the webinar is being recorded, everyone, and it will be made available after the event. So just go out to your account managers and we'll send them over to you along with the slide deck. And feel free to pose any questions in the chat, and we'll try and get to those at the end of the webinar. I've been joined by Max, who is a partner of ours for a company called Change Adopt, and he's the managing partner over there. Max, welcome. Do you want to give yourself a bit of an intro?
Yeah, thank you. So morning, folks. So myself and my team are Coalface, working with customers to help them realize the value of Microsoft 365 technologies. But as Chris said, since the advent of Copilot, there's obviously been quite a significant shift towards that being a key focus area. We have written and implemented trials and strategies with some of the largest, right down to some of the smallest organizations in the UK. So we have quite a wealth of experience now in how to try and find the value from Copilot, certainly to identify that. And then, you know, being brutally honest, it's not the cheapest license in the world, right? So we all want to get value from it. It promises quite a lot, and it's a new skill set for a lot of your users. So working out a process of how to do that is really key, and that's some of what I'll go through today.
Cheers, Max.
No worries.
Okie doke. So just a quick list of things that we'll discuss, and they'll be a part of this so that you can tick them off your list. We're going to do a quick session on what's new, as in this month or the end of this month and what's coming up in Copilot, because there's been a number amount of changes since its release in November. But yeah, we're going to nip through a few of those and give some details. And then we're going to cross over to Max, who's going to go into identifying the value, the key challenges, principles upon which to build a trial. So yeah, quite a lot of our customers are moving towards doing trials of trials before they roll out Copilot or anything around AI. We then move on to objectives and measures, into real world trial process, and then questions after. So there's quite a lot of things that me and Max talk about that they've learned and he passes on to us. So there's some pretty variable things to get out of this session for you, I hope. So we shall go on to Copilot for M365 and what's coming up, or what has happened basically very recently. So in May, we had Copilot in Teams happen. Well, it's already been there, but we've got another release, which is automated meetings, summaries, and task assignments. So basically, it's going to be providing real-time meeting summaries and task assignments. It captures the key points automatically, and it'll follow up and organize next steps. So it's just a bit of an improvement on to what's already available, and the fact that you have to prompt it to do that. It's going to start to do a lot of those automatically for you. We have Copilot in OneDrive. So we've got the ability to enhance file organization and identify duplicates, which is a biggie because Copilot 365 obviously depends on the quality of data that you've got. The more files that you've got about the place, the more problem. Plus, it's going to reduce the size that you've got in that OneDrive. And we've got allows natural language queries to extract file information and generate summaries more impactfully. So it's starting to kind of roll those skills out a little bit more. Copilot in Outlook, which is probably one of the areas a lot of people get value out of in just summarizing what you've got to do, but it's moving forward in releasing in May, manages emails with priority sorting and response suggestions. And also it's going to be summarizing threads and drafting replies and flagging important messages to you. Just to repeat, this was released in May, so this will be rolling out as part of your update channel, whatever you've got that set to. Copilot in Word, assisting with document drafting, editing and summarization is going to be improved, and it will create first draft, summarizing text and rewrite sections to improve clarity straight away for you without prompting. Excel is getting better. It was probably the slowest one at the beginning, but it's starting to bring in a lot of the value now. So it's enhancing data analysis and visualizations. So you're going to be able to get more out of it from that, which is going to be helpful. And again, it will start to answer natural language questions a lot better, identifying your trends better and suggesting formulas and visualizations for you. And finally, Copilot in PowerPoint. Yeah, that's you've got to prompt that quite a lot to get what you want out of it. Plus, also, you need to get your design gallery set up correctly for it to really start bringing you back what you want. But this one's going to generate design suggestions and automates presentation creation for you a lot better. Create slides from documents, add notes, and reformats texts. Again, this is just getting a lot smoother. A lot of these releases, they're just kind of ironing out a lot of the cranks and the stoppers in there. Okay, this is a cool slide. So what is upcoming over the next few months? And there are a few things. So we've got what we got there, advanced predictive analytics. So what does that mean? So enhanced AI driven insights. So new predictive analytics capabilities will be available, leveraging AI and machine learning to provide deeper insights, and it will support better decision making across Microsoft 365 apps. This includes models from Azure Machine Learning into Synapses to enhance data analysis and enrich data with AI tools. We've got expanded integration, so it's got a broader application and service integration. Copilot will be integrated into additional Microsoft 365 applications and third-party services, expanding its utility and seamless operation across different platforms. This integration aims to streamline workflows by providing AI capabilities in more contexts, within the Microsoft ecosystem. Improved natural language processing, NLP. So enhanced understanding and response accuracy is getting better. Copilot's NLP capabilities will be upgraded to better understand and respond to user queries and commands. The improvement will result in more accurate and contextually appropriate results. I do notice some that are a bit flowery at the moment. It will make interactions with Copilot more efficient and effective. Customization options, tailored functionalities for users and IT admins. Control, I think that's also a big thing that's coming out now with admins, is that control element, and they are starting to build things in. So this new customization features will allow users and IT administrators to tailor Copilot's functionalities to their specific needs. This includes the ability to customize your prompts, adjust settings, and configure Copilot to better align with individual or organizational requirements. I think the experience has been very different with using Copilot for internal interaction as it is to external interaction. So that's kind of leveling up there. Security and compliance updates. So there's going to be enhanced data security and privacy, continuous improvements all the time will be made to data security, compliance measures, and privacy protections. These updates ensure that Copilot operates with the stringent security and compliance frameworks established by Microsoft, maintaining high standards for data protection and privacy across the Microsoft cloud. So there are a number of things there, and there are only a few that I've picked out. There are other things around licensing, which I won't go into because that's a magic art. But yeah, there is talk of the business basic being included coming up and things like that. So it's worth keeping your eye on exactly what's changing. They're also delivering quite a lot of backtracking into kind of older Outlook because the uptake of that wasn't all that good. So yeah, just keep your eyes on the roadmap website, the Microsoft roadmap, and then just highlight Copilot, and it'll go into everything that's coming up. And it is a good idea to keep a track of everything that's happening. Yeah, there. So we shall move on away from those. And it has been 6 months since Copilot hit GA, which seems like 2 minutes ago. And it seems to have taken pretty much all of my time. And as the past 2 slides have kind of demonstrated, there's been additions and loads of improvements that have been made. But what I would say is that personally, it's taken probably around about 6 months for me to get to grips with the Copilot tool and how to use it correctly and how to prompt and do all of these things. I think it has taken that amount of investment, and I am tech savvy to really understand where I'm starting to get and where I can get benefits from it and how to interact with it. We've never used anything like this before. It's using different muscles and different skills. And basically, we need to know how to, we need a help, basically, to get us through that learning journey. There's also a bit of a sense, and we'll just call it out here, of underwhelmment, if that is a word, around Copilot. It's a lot of money. And there is a lot of suggestion and a lot of feedback coming back that's saying that they don't see the value or they're not getting the best out of it. And a lot of them are just applying 10 licenses here and there. And they've come up to the conclusion probably after a week. I could sympathize with that over the first part of, I was wondering where I'm going to get things out of it. But it's the persistence thing that's helped me. So it kind of begs me to ask that question, which leads us into what this webinar is all about, basically. And is it the actual tool's fault, or is it again the approach that we're taking to roll out this tool that's failing? And that could be based on pressures that we're getting from C-suite or anything. But me and Max, we discussed this quite a lot, and we've had, he's taught me a lot actually in the way, because I come from a tech background, of actually the fluff is a little bit. It's not the fluff anymore. It's actually the difficult bit when it comes to something like this and getting a good adoption through. So I'm going to pass over to Max now and shut up and let Max kind of go through everything that he's learned. basically. So
Cool.
yeah, good luck with that, Max. You've got 30 minutes.
No worries. Right. So, and Chris makes a really good point in that how we interact with technology has been relatively similar, right, for a long period of time. And this is the start of a different way of interacting with technology and getting something back from it. And it is a new skill set. And it's not dead simple or dead straightforward. And actually, therefore, we need to start from a position of empathy in terms of how we are going to support users to get through it. Because there is a real reality that, as it says on the screen, don't trust your trial with to your users. If we just give them the technology, there is every chance, and I promise this is true because we've seen it, your users may have a bit of a dabble, but they will very quickly move away from it and go back to how they know how to use the tools to get their job done. And we'll talk more about that as we go through, just to ensure that that we identify where the value lies. So if we are going to do a trial, and I'll frame everything I talk about around a trial, it's making sure that we go through a particular process in order to see the value out the back of it, in order to build a business case, to identify where and how you can get the value from the technology that you're investing in. So Chris, if you click through, so this first slide depicts what an unmanaged typical trial would look like. So if you look on the right hand side on the graph, it's very easy to find people who are happy, put their kind of hand up and say, yeah, I'll have a little bit go at that generative AI stuff. I've heard a lot about that. They've got some kind of thoughts on what that might look like. Think it might help them on a day-to-day basis. Happy to have a bit of a go at it. That initial enthusiasm is not difficult to generally find in most organizations, but we quickly see a drop off in the interaction with the technology, and for lots of really good reasons. So the first one being is that if I have a certain set of perceptions about what generative AI can do, like I'm going to be able to put my feet up, it's going to do my job for me, it's dead easy, it's really super intuitive, it's going to do everything I need it to do. And then when I get to it, actually, it's a new skill set. And we say that, and Chris was talking about the fact that, if Chris has had some challenges to work out how to prompt, and he eats and breathes this stuff, your standard user is going to find challenges in doing it. And there's no point in pretending that's not going to be the case. We have to look at the harsh realities of what that looks like. So what we need to be able to do is actually set people's expectations on what the tool is and what it can and can't do. So where are the parameters in which it will be successful? And it's best to do that in line with the particular roles and functions within the organization. So not talking generically, but how does it actually work for different functions? What is it they can get from it? What can they expect when they get to it? Aligned to that is raising their capability. If they have a bit of and I think it's probably common sense that if someone has a go at prompt engineering and trying to get something back from the tool, and it doesn't work, and they have another go and maybe another go, and it's not really coming back with what they want, very quickly they'll just say it's rubbish. And that's the value and the feedback you'll get from your trial, is that it's of no use to them, it doesn't work for them. And it's probably not the case. It's a new skill in how to interact with that technology. So when I came out of university some 24 years ago, and I had on my CV that I had web skills, because that was new and modern, and I thought I was very, very capable. Prompt engineering will become just how we interact with technology, but it's a new skill set now, and so therefore we need to help people with it. The big one for me is the next one down, is day job pressures. So from my perspective, we have all worked in pretty much a similar way for the last however many years, 10, 15, 20 years, and we know how to get our job done using the technology that we have available to us. So I mean to be part of the trial, and I mean to definitely give it a bit of a whirl and test it, but actually I've got a deadline to get something done and the pressure's on. Am I going to genuinely spend time trying to get Copilot to do that job for me when I'm under pressure, or am I just going to get it done how I know I've always how I always have done? And that's real world, right? We all are under pressure, we all have deadlines, and as much as I might start the process meaning to do it, I am likely to end up going back to the ways I've always done things because I know I can get it done. And next time, honestly, I'll do the good work and I will test out the tool, but it kind of never comes. So we quickly again see that kind of drop off based on the real world challenges, realities, and timescales we're all with. Then ask for being configuration. If it's not configured appropriately, obviously the user can't get the best from it. So we need to make sure that we've put everything in how it needs to be in order for it to actually work for the users. And then the final kind of column on the graph is the pressured results. So if you're in a trial and you've agreed to do something and report back, quite often when we get into that deadline, us as users will have a bit of a play with it right before the end. So you see a little uptick in people's activity, or they'll just repeat what someone else is saying, or they'll just make it up. Any of those are zero use. What we need is for people to be engaged in the process and test Copilot in amongst their day-to-day processes. And that's the real challenge with Copilot, is what we aren't asking people to do is just go in and test a point solution. It's actually, as Chris pointed out in his early slides, it's laced within the productivity, communications and collaboration tools that we use for pretty much everything, as certainly as information workers, but it's laced in everything. So we are asking people to change not one thing, but multiple things, multiple ways of working in order to be able to really identify the value. So Chris, if you click on, and what we'll do is we'll start to talk about what it takes in order to be able to actually recognize that value. So the graph on the right hand side is the desired user trial engagement. And what we're trying to do is harness that initial enthusiasm in order to be able to keep it at a relatively level throughout the process. We don't want to see that big drop off, obviously. And so there are some ways and means of doing that. And actually, the key for us is that engagement with users, and we'll talk about kind of that as we go through. Now, one of the things I will say is initial enthusiasm isn't enough. It's not enough for people to just put their hand up and say that they are prepared to be part of the trial. What we need to do is actually start to mentally prepare people for what what the tool can do, but two, what we require back from them in order to be able to get value from the trial. They need to understand the value to the organization and for us to position it appropriately, because what we're talking about is changing how pretty much everyone in the organization is going to work, how they're interacting with technology, and really looking at how this can affect the strategy of the organization and underpin the performance of everyone. So the people who are involved in it need to buy into the fact that they've got to give some feedback. There will be touch points throughout the process, and really get into the whole process and understanding of the value and the strategic nature of what we're talking about, so that it positions it slightly differently. So they're going into it knowing that they have to play the game, as it were, in terms of actually being involved. It's not just paying lip service to it. It's not something we dabble with. It's actually a key part of what we're looking at doing as an organization. Naturally, we have to set their expectations in terms of actually the parameters of the tool. So if we don't, as human beings, if we aren't given kind of the knowledge and awareness of what something can do, without, it's not a conscious process, but we fill the gaps of knowledge with assumption. So we can't allow that to happen. We have to give people the actual knowledge of what it can and can't do, and therefore also the prerequisite skills in order to be able to do it. Again, some of those are, and I'll talk about this when we get into the trial process. So there's coming up is a real world trial process that we used we've used several customers in slightly different guises depending on kind of their needs, but it gives a natural ability for people to see success and then move on to some more challenging areas, because what we don't want to do is lose people's attention. So if we give them a little bit of knowledge and they go away and they practice that knowledge, one, that helps it stick, but two, they start to see, actually this works, I'm getting value from it. Okay, we'll go back to the next little bit of learning, and they learn something new that builds on that knowledge, and then they see some more success. And we gradually build up that through that process. And that does a couple of different things. One, it supports how we best learn as individuals. So we learn best by taking a small amount of knowledge which is relevant to what we already do. So we have some knowledge already stored on that subject matter, and actually the neuroscience of it is we physically place that knowledge next to already held knowledge, and then there's neural pathways already to it, so recall is dramatically improved. But it also helps us feel like this is relevant and it works for us, so we're more bought into the potentially more challenging things that we'll need to learn further down the road. So a big one for me is number 4, which is the continual engagement. One of the big things that we need to do, and this is where the heavy lifting right in the trial comes, in order that we know then how to, and I'll come on to that more, but if we do all the heavy lifting in the trial and we identify for each function of the organization where the value lies, then when we roll it out, it becomes a hell of a lot easier, because we'll be talking to finance about how it works for them. We'll be talking to legal about how it works for them, rather than a kind of broad tool, and we're asking users to make the leap between how the technology works for their job. That's literally the job of the trial, is to identify for each area of the organization where the value lies and how their people will best get value from it, how they'll interact with it, and what it is they need to do, even down to prompts that actually work. So we need to engage with users to keep their attention. So what we need to do is make sure that there are touch points along the way in order that we stay engaged with users, and they aren't allowed or enabled to be able to drop off and go back to their normal kind of ways of working. Best example I can kind of come up with is if someone gave me a gym membership for a month and expected me to come back super fit at the end of that month, it's unlikely, because there's a lot of barriers to me getting through that. If someone gave me a gym membership but then put in my diary lots of sessions with a personal trainer, I would feel more obligated, for one, to engage. I would be supported by someone who's an expert to actually use the tools at my disposal, and actually the result being is I would much more likely come away with just one chin rather than 2 at the end of that month. So the next one is community. So what we're trying to do is actually breathe some life into the trial, get users talking to each other. Who's seeing success? What are they struggling with? How can they help each other? We curate that community, and we add tips and ways of supporting or different ideas of how to utilize the tools. And that's kind of it's a comms plan that's sat behind that. It's considered, but what we're trying to do is actually just keep it at that kind of forefront of attention the whole way through. And obviously during that process, we are collating feedback, whether that's part of the community or the direct support that we have with users themselves. We're making sure that we're able to collect that information on what's working, how it's working, what they're doing that's really good, what are the kind of productivity savings that they're making, really collating all of that good stuff from different areas of the organization in order to then build a business case for where the value truly lies. So if we click on to the next one, Chris, what I'll talk about is the objectives and measures. And generally, if I'm honest, it's about more effective working practices. It's about productivity gains. There is and I've worked with lots of organizations who have different versions of what they're looking for, from organizations who are looking to make their organization more of a destination. So having technology underpin the working environment and make it kind of like at the forefront of within their locality. And I'm talking this is a local authority. They wanted, because they struggled to get good talent in, so they wanted to make it a place that's like cutting edge. It's as good as any private sector organization, if not better, and they want to really make it a place that people will work. But nuts and bolts of it is generally where can we find time savings to ensure that we're focused on the key activities. And I'll be honest, every single organisation I've worked with, there hasn't been a single one, and I will address it because it's something that comes up a lot. It's not been a single one who's saying, yeah, we want to cut people as a result of that. That's not what this is about, because Copilot is about making your people more effective. It's enabling them to potentially remove repetitive, mundane tasks, or minimize them rather, and focusing on the things that actually are genuinely of value. So when we talk about identifying the value for Copilot, it generally is identifying for each function of the organization how they can use it and what sort of time savings and productivity gains they can get, aligned with some more kind of qualitative methods around the value to those individuals, because we are improving how people will interact with technology, and actually we are going to remove some of the more mundane and challenging tasks. So I will use another example from a local authority while it's in my head, where they're looking to use it to get rid of or minimize, sorry, the time spent on freedom of information requests. There's multiple sources of data that Copilot will go out and fish and bring back the data. That still requires a human being to check it, go through it, but it makes it a much, much faster process. So then we move to how do we effectively roll out at scale? So that is a really key measure as part of the process. So what we're doing as part of the trial is not just looking at functionally how the technology works, but how can we actually roll this out to the various parts of the organization that we know we're going to end up getting to. So are there any key processes, resources, and people that need to be involved in that, so that we can set up that kind of process in the future? But really, it does start with the one above. It starts with where does the value lie, and then how do we go about that in the most cost-effective method to roll this out to different parts of the organisation. Are there improved working practices? Now, this is one that I think often goes kind of missed, and everyone's focus is on Copilot. But there are some fundamental working practices that, while we're spending time with users and we are engaged with them, what we want to do is make the most of that time. So instead of just talking about Copilot, we want to talk about Copilot in the context of how people actually work and the tools that it's laced within. So how do they interact with others? What is it they do on a weekly basis that's challenging and mundane? For two reasons. One, we want to identify that for Copilot, but actually what's being left on the table in terms of kind of improved working practices that sits across all of the Microsoft 365 suite. So we're looking to come out the back of that with a really brilliant business plan that actually, or business case, sorry, that says for all of the different functions in the organization, Copilot will find these improvements and productivity gains. But actually, all of the Microsoft 365 suite, here's where we can actually realize the value for the rest of the organization, so that we actually are getting the best from what we already invest in, and we're improving the skills and capabilities of the users across the entire organization where it's relevant for them in their different roles and functions. It's a really good opportunity for us to make the most of the total investment in Microsoft, rather than it just focusing in on Copilot. So Chris, if you can click through to the next one. So this looks relatively complicated. It is a real world trial process. It was originally written for an enormous retailer in the UK and has been tweaked and changed, and there are different versions of it, but the basis of this has been used in all sorts of different sectors, from financial, tech, public sector. So yeah, kind of pretty much anyone you can think of, we're kind of engaged with from some sort of vertical perspective. So I'll talk it through. There are three key elements. The first one is preparation, execution, and business case. So preparation is key, and very often in most changes that we manage, whether it's Copilot or anything else, not enough time is given to preparation in order then to make the kind of execution work as smoothly as possible. So Chris, if you click through to the next slide, we'll focus in on preparation. That's it. So I won't go into every single step in the process, but I'll talk broadly about them. The starting point is that what we need to do is make sure that as a team, whether that's us involved with you or you guys yourselves, but you have a team of people who are there to support the process, right? It's considered to be an entire process front to back. It is a project in its own right. So you have the right people lined up, all facing the right direction, and with agreed kind of objectives and measures along the way. So what is it we're looking to get from it? Why are we doing this in the first place? Which is, it sounds almost kind of too rudimentary, but there are a lot of organizations who are trying to roll out Copilot, and they put the technology in place and people are dabbling with it, but they're not really thinking about what it is they're going to measure and what it is they're trying to get from it in order to get to a business case at the end. Obviously, we need to create comms strategies and engagement processes to start to affect people's perceptions. We start from a position of creating personas. It's a really useful piece that how we believe people will be able to use the technology within the confines of your organization. Where are their commonalities across different groups, and how can we actually start to build training and engagement that is relevant for those different groups. What we want to be able to do is to, and then I'll address the one at the bottom, which is create Dragon's Den pitch material. So it's a really nice piece in order to start to get, oh, you're right there, Chris. So the Dragon's Den pitch is where we're starting to try to build what's called agency within key stakeholders who are across the organization and potentially either part of the trial or their reports are part of the trial. So what we want to do is get them thinking about what Copilot could mean to their part of the organization. The reason that's important and the reason we do it early is we want them to start to feel part of the change that's coming. This is the start of the kind of change management process where we're affecting the perceptions of people in order that when it comes to actually rolling something out, they're a lot more engaged in it. And what we're doing here is educating them a bit about Copilot, what it can do. We want them to go away and think about how that can apply to their function. The reason being is if they then come up with any ideas, that's great, and we will help them to work that through and how Copilot can affect key processes, things that they do within their particular function, and find the right ways of going about that. And that is really key, because not just broad ways of using Copilot, and Chris mentioned some of those, and Outlook and Teams, which definitely people will see value in, but how can we get under the skin of each department and find real value? And if they're helping as part of that process, it's not IT or any sort of management function coming and telling them how to work. They are working it through with us in order to find the real value for the tool set within their function, to find the productivity gains and actually better ways of working. And that, what's called agency, is really, really important when you're trying to roll through a change, particularly with kind of a middle management level. It makes a big difference. Excuse me, big difference in their acceptance and support of that change. We then need to identify trialists. It's really key. We need to make sure that all of the trialists across the organisation represent key parts of the organisation. Want to make sure that they are representative of all the functions that we believe are going to get value from it. There are, depending on your organisation, there are people who don't touch technology much, who you probably wouldn't invest in a Copilot license for, but there are going to be functions where you definitely see it. And so we need to make sure that we've considered who's part of that trial, so the personality traits we want, and they're going to build the perception so that they understand they're part of it, but we need functionally people who are going to represent each area of the organisation. So if we click through to the next one, and I'm going to talk a bit here about the kind of the training and the check-ins that we do. So it's quite a complicated slide, and this is where kind of the rubber meets the road. So the starting point is the workshop and the launch. What we're looking for there, and whether it's a singular workshop or it's multiple, depending on the size of the trial and the number of users, but what we're looking for is to help people really start to understand the fundamentals around prompt engineering, really set expectations on what the tools can do for them. And we do that in a really light way. It's not like there's tons of information. We want to keep it at a level that we know people can digest. And the purpose then of you've got training sessions along the bottom, along the kind of that's the middle section, is that what we're trying to do is give people the basics and then gradually build their knowledge over time. So we want them to be able to see, and I mentioned it earlier, but see success. It's really, really key that they see success in using the tool. They start to interact with it, and they actually get value back from it. And actually it lowers the barrier to them interacting with the technology. It lowers that kind of unconscious fear of using the technology in itself. And then we gradually build on that over time to get them to be really quite self-sufficient. Now the check-ins and sharing along the top they're the kind of personal coaching sessions that really we're putting in place, that we're keeping in touch with people, and if they're struggling, we can help them, and if they are seeing success, we can reuse that and collect that data and actually proliferate that to the rest of the organization via the kind of community, and making sure that we're helping other people where some people are seeing success and actually where that works. But we're really looking in those ones to get, one, keep people's focus and attention, but two, really start to get under the skin of how it can impact each part of the organization. Now, this is a really hands-on process in order to get there. If you don't, and by no means does anyone have to, if you want to roll licenses out, and Chris mentioned that quite often we're seeing people do a trial of a trial, what you'll find is even if they're really friendlies and actually quite capable of techies, they'll do what I have said largely people do when we were looking at the graphs earlier, is they'll have a bit of a go at it, have a dabble, we go back to their day job because we're all busy. It needs to be a considered process and an engaged process with users that helps to then identify where that value lies for each function of the organization. Because unless we do that, and if you click through to the next one, Chris, the ability for us to build that kind of the whole set of recommendations and a business case that represents each part of the organization is obviously limited. But more importantly, when we go to roll this out to the rest of the organization, if we know for each function where the value lies, how people are interacting it, what the prompts are that they use, we can really specifically train people. And that means that the effectiveness of the investment in Copilot and the effectiveness of the usage of that technology is dramatically improved. And it also means that when we roll out, the training is really, it's basically written for itself. It means it's really quick and easy to do because we know exactly what we're delivering to who and how they're going to best get value from it. So the support's all easier, and we actually have our champions in place because those people who have been part of the trial, they've already had it. They know they've seen success. They know exactly how to use it in each area and function of the organisation. So there's people to support within there. So it becomes really cost effective when we get into scale because we've been hands-on and really getting amongst with the users from that early part of the process. Cool. So I think that's the bulk of it done. So I know there's been some questions going. So Chris, I haven't been able to keep up with them.
Yeah, no, don't worry about that. I'll nip in with a few, and yeah, if anybody has got any questions, just whack it in the chat now. We can kind of take it through some of them, but there are a couple in there, and there was a bit of one that we discussed, right? And I told you, well, we're both aware, right? So scenario is, and this happens a lot, is that, as you said earlier, AI is this new cool technology. It's not, but it's kind of new, to everybody. And so you've got C-suite that are just sat there going, this is cool. And you kind of mentioned it with, it's also kind of setting up how businesses run because they want to look as being cool to attract new talent. But you've got that C-suite there that's suddenly engaged with IT. And I used to be in IT, right? And you'd never get engagement. So if you ever tried to kind of roll anything out, they're not interested, or a lot aren't interested. They just want you to deliver. You're a business service rather than a business enhancer. And that's all changing now because suddenly, all of a sudden, the C-suite are going, we need this, I want this, and I want to be on the trial because I need to be the first person that's got it. How as an IT member do you deal with that and manage? Is it that we need a professional in to do it because it's a different skill set and that we have to promote that? But how can we kind of get around those kind of elements where they're kind of going, well, it's obvious you do it this way, so let's just crack on, whereas IT, no, it isn't that obvious, and we've also got a load of IT debt that we need to clear up in order to get ready for Copilot. So hold your horses. insights would you give to help that conversation?
Do you know what? I think it's a little bit of what we went through today in terms of, I think a lot of it's common sense, right? There is part of it that is if they understand the challenge around just that starting point around how do you get value back? How do you actually prompt in order to get something back across lots of different areas, and understanding that it is lots of different areas, it's a big investment. And in order to realize the value, you're introducing a totally new skill set on top of multiple ways of working. So your level of complexity of change is really quite high. So it requires a process in order to get there. And as much as it's great that there is enthusiasm from the business, because that's not always the case, right? When technology needs to change, it's not always seen as a kind of necessary evil, whereas getting excitement is a great place to start with the C-suite, but it is actually making sure that they understand that it's a new skill set. It's not something that you can just pick up in 10 minutes and see the value in. So I think it is actually demonstrating the process you need to go through. As frustrating as that might be to them, and I have seen, that's why a trial of a trial is not necessarily a bad thing, because if you give it to them and they can't do it, it's like, okay, you couldn't do it, but we can get you there, and you can show the process about how you would get there. That's not necessarily a terrible thing as well, but it is the articulation of the fact that if we want to get value from it, there is effort involved in doing it. It's not magic. We've all seen kind of films where AI is purported to be something that just does things intuitively. We've all watched Iron Man and stuff like that, where AI exists to chat to, and it does everything on our behalf. But the reality being is, it's an assistant. It's for want of a better term, it's Clippy on steroids, and we need to make sure that we are providing the process and capabilities in order for users to be able to get there. So it's a complex process.
Any hints on the stakeholders that really should be engaged if it comes up, we need Copilot 365, or we need any kind of generative AI or AI in, who do you need involved to kind of push through something like this? And how would Change Adopt, how can they fit in to the whole kind of rollout?
So a big part of it is stakeholders from across the business. So like you've said, it's this isn't generally, there is excitement, from the rest of the business, and it's not generally just an IT push. This is a strategic piece that underpins the performance of users across the organization. So the stakeholders are representative of every key part of the organization, and the more senior the better, certainly to begin with, because we need their buy-in, and we need them to understand that this is a shift change in how the organization will work. And that's the thing we kind of have to get our heads around. It's not one of those things where, well, we might do it. At some point, the vast majority of organizations, you're going to get there. At some point, you're going to end up getting there, because as you were going through earlier, Chris, it's only ever going to improve. The rate of development around Copilot is crazy. So where we'll be in a year, 18 months, 2 years time, there is no point. You're not going to bite the bullet. You're going to have to do it. It's just a matter of kind of when, because your competition will find the efficiencies that you are not necessarily realizing. So finding the right stakeholders, educating them about what this means from a strategic perspective, and getting them bought into and being part of the process, as opposed to, which, let's be honest, IT can be guilty of. IT being done to an organization rather than with it is not uncommon. So we need to make sure that this is a kind of actually a business-led process that is done with real knowledge and understanding of what it takes to get there.
Cool. Yeah, makes all sense. And any tips around accelerating? So there may be some licenses out there already. I mean, I know one quick tip from me is when it comes to prompting, share the wealth. So either there's things online like Prompt Buddy and stuff that you can have, that you can collate all the prompts that that work, and you share that amongst the business. So then you're taking them, they don't have to do the first 20 yards all the, the first 10 yards, I think it's the same, and all the time. You've got them to a prompt that is looking good, and then you can tell them to do the bits. I know that that's an accelerator.
It is, but you can't skip the process of setting people up at the beginning and building their perceptions and understanding early. And I have seen it where people have thrown Prompt Buddy at people, and it's still a jump for a user to get there. We need to, it's like baby steps so they're comfortable and there's no barrier between them and the technology. And then Prompt Buddy becomes a really valuable tool because I understand the basis of prompting and how to use it. There isn't a shortcut past that process if you want to be successful, but it's a little bit of effort to begin with, and then it will grow and people will be comfortable and they will explore it and they'll find better ways, and actually the tool will become more intuitive as much as anything. And like you said, some things will just become more automatic. So yeah, there are shortcuts, but I'm loath to talk about shortcuts without understanding the first bit.
As soon as you said that bit, I kind of bought in. It's those tacit kind of elements, isn't it, of learning something new that actually is what sets the map in the brain kind of thing. Otherwise, you're just, again, spoon feeding. So you're not going to get the best out of it. Although the prompts might help, essentially, you're not going to get the best out of it in the end. But yeah, I've always found them helpful. But there are a ton of things that make things helpful, like the one that you said to me about actually asking Copilot what not to do. And it's that kind of understanding that you guys teach, isn't it, of how to talk to something to get it to do something that you want, which is why managers are so good at it, or they tend to be, is that because they direct, and you're basically directing a Copilot, a colleague, to go and do stuff. I can't see any more questions coming through there, but obviously it's a huge topic, and it's not an easy answer, in the fact that I do get that whole debt thing, and the pressure that the top pushes down, and that they just want it out tomorrow. That's been IT, full stop. We've got things now that they say, really, technically, it's going to take 2 months. We want it out next week, make it happen, kind of thing. And really, the rule is you can't. With this.
There are some technical prerequisites, and there's some behavioural pieces that you need to get to first if you want to be successful. That's the thing. There are multiple ways to skin a cat, depending on the number of the people involved. But it's smart to do it the right way.
Brilliant. Okay. Well, I think we've come naturally to a breathing post in the end. It's worth just calling out that, if approach your account managers or anybody at Ultima or myself, if you want to get engaged with understanding a bit more about this process and also how change adopts, and we can help. So obviously with Ultima, we can also assist on the technical side and enablement, and kind of take you through that process, and also everything that's available from Microsoft around, the possibles and things like that are in there. But I definitely think it's worth engaging with Max and Change Adopt to kind of get to the bottom of that. If you already have licenses, it's probably worth calling out as well that on the 27th of June of this month, Ultima are doing a round table on how to basically prompt engineer and how to do and get the best out of Copilot if you've got the licenses already. So it's an engagement where there's a number of professionals, we're all professionals, but a number of people that have spent a long time in rooms, in caves, trying to understand how this can actually be a business benefit, and then just give some real output from that as to what to do. So again, reach out for that. It will be a good event at the end of the year in London. But thank you for attending. It's been good, and I've learned a lot. So cheers, Max, for joining us.
No problem. Thanks, folks.
Thank you. Yeah, cheers, Max.
No worries.
I think. Yeah, there's some